Got the carburetor out, and I've cleaned off most of the major grease from it outside with a brush and some brake cleaner. Can't do that inside, it's flammable. I'm working in a room where my furnace is. I've also got my spare carburetor. A couple of things are broken on this one. It's missing the fuel inlet. I'm going to decide which carburetor has the best parts. Use that one. They're both the same model, both from 1987. So that's going to be good for me in case I need to change any parts out. They're interchangeable. There's a lot of minor differences between particular years of Ford carburetors or Motorcraft carburetors like this 2150. So if you're going to be building one and you have a parts carburetor, try to get one as close as possible to the year you're building. Got my carburetor repair kit, rebuild kit. Standard motor products. And the gaskets and seals, power valve. Just a nice little package. One other thing that comes in just about every rebuild kit is the instruction sheet. And this is one of those things which is obvious to people who have rebuilt carburetors before. It may not be obvious to everybody. It wasn't obvious to me the first few years I rebuilt carburetors. There's a parts list for the carburetor, identifying what part is where. That parts list is going to identify the sequence in which you remove each of the parts. So the first part, the air deflector, is this piece right in front of the choke. It deflects hot air from heating up the choke prematurely. That mounts right to the front. I've already taken that off. I didn't want the brake cleaner to mess up the label on this one. I didn't do that over here. It messed up the label. So in order to take apart the carburetor, you just follow the parts list here. Now, most carburetor rebuild kits are for a multitude of models. Inside, they'll have adjustment data, specifications for the choke, the float, and so forth. Find your model. Make sure you have an idea of what its specifications are going to be. And that's it. You just follow along, removing parts in the order that they are listed. One other thing I recommend, a couple other things I recommend. One, have a raised base on which to rest the carburetor. You can use a block of wood like I'm doing on this one, spare carburetor over here. If you have a carburetor spacer plate, I happen to have a spacer, 2-inch spacer. That's good because the bottom of the carburetor is not flat. On this one, the power valve as well as the linkage for the throttle stick below the base plate of the carburetor. If you try to rest it on the ground, it rests crooked. You can't move the throttle. If you have something on which to rest it, it makes it a lot easier. Alright, so just go down the parts list. Number 3, choke clip. That's going to be a part down in here somewhere. Any good rebuild kit will come with replacement clips and such, so you don't have to worry about bending it when you remove it. And of course the diagram is not always utterly clear on which part they're referring to. On this one, number 3, clip choke rod. Number 3 is a blob. Now, one thing about this carburetor, the second carburetor I have here, is it has an intact choke mechanism. carburetor I'm starting out with. The previous owner disconnected the choke mechanism. So which clip is it referring to? I'm going to guess it's going to be referring to this E-clip right here. So to remove that, you can get your screwdriver in the little tangs and pry it off. You can do that, or else you can just push it off with a wider blade screwdriver. And then grab it with the smaller blade screwdriver. There you go, little E-clip. Why? Because it looks like an E. I'll put that in my choke parts there. Also, keep clear on the orientation of all these parts. Clip, choke, pull-down rod, number 4. Is that the pull-down rod? I don't know, but it's got a clip on there. And that has to come off. So, let's take that one off. Again, by pushing down on the tangs on the open end, you can usually get your screwdriver up under the inside of the E. Sometimes it helps to have a longer screwdriver to pry it, to get it into a position where you can pry it out. There we go. E-clip number 2. Another thing, handy hint, rebuild it inside of a tray of some sort. You can use a baking tray, you can use a big aluminum tray. Purpose is so that when parts come off, they don't go flying into the nether parts of your basement. Number 5, screw choke pull down assembly. Number 5 on the choke pull down assembly. Which is that referring to? Where's number 5? Be like a little puzzle. Fun little puzzle. Try to figure out where's Waldo, where's number 5. It's got to be somewhere along here. Choke pull down. Are they referring to this? Not obviously. No. So choke pull down screw. Where is that? Choke pull down screw. What are they referring to? Well, somewhere on here they have something called a choke pull down screw. There we go. The reason I don't see it is because it's for the choke pull down diaphragm on the back. I've already removed it. The 2 screws are already in my parts bin there. So we're on to number 6, cover, choke pull off. 6A, bolt, cover, choke pull off. 3 of them. What is that referring to? Number 6. Where's number 6? Where is number 6? 6A, 6B, 6C. Sometimes there is going to be little breakout diagrams showing you alternate arrangements of the parts. But 6, 6, 6. Oh, I see what it's saying. Choke, cover, diaphragm, spring, return. That's all one piece on this. I'm not adjusting it. I'm not taking that apart. Oh, and I see what that meant for clip choke pull down rod. That actually doesn't have a clip on this one. On this one, it simply swings over and grabs it like that. So, on to the next part. Part number 7. That's going to be another part I already removed. The idle solenoid that holds the throttle open. That's number 7, screw dash pot and solenoid assembly. And then the dash pot and solenoid assembly, that's number 8. So that's already off. Moving on to part number 9. Now we're getting to the top of it. There's 6 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, holding the top cover on. So 9 screw air horn assembly. Just a Phillips head screw. You do want to tighten these down gently in a crisscross pattern when you put this back on. That doesn't make a difference removing it. And one minor item, 2 minor items about this. These have little washers, little lock washers to hold them in place. Make sure you get those when you take off the screw. Second, has a little identification plate. You want to keep that with the carburetor so that, since you're not the last person probably to ever use this carburetor, the next person will know what kind of carburetor it is. That's the code for it. Air horn assembly comes off next. That's going to be held on by a gasket. The gasket is old and crusty. That's going to be replaced. I'm going to clean off this whole thing. And there we see the inside of the carburetor. The float, the 2 barrels, the altitude compensator on the 2150 Motorcraft carburetor, which distinguishes it from the 2100. A float bowl. It's not too dirty. Needs to be cleaned out, but it's not too bad. This is my original carburetor. I haven't looked inside my parts carburetor yet, but this one's looking pretty good. It's not too messy, not too dirty. I don't see major buildup. And it was running on the truck, not particularly well, but it was running. So, I'm going to try to rebuild this one, taking any parts I need off of this extra carburetor, which is a little messed up. This extra carburetor, you can tell it's seen somewhere. Someone, I don't know what they did to this. They scraped around this set screw. It's all chewed up. This one, nice, clean, easily moved set screw. So I'm going to start with this one. Gasket ear horn, gasket D-cell fitting, fitting D-cell valve, 12, 13, 14. What are those parts? Oh, I see. 12, 13, 14. 12, 13, 14 do not apply. So I don't have to worry about those parts in this carburetor. Down to 15, gasket ear horn. That's on the bottom of it. Screw retainer choke cover, 16. Screw retainer choke cover. That's going to be these screws on the choke. So how many of those? 3 of those. Flat blade screwdriver to remove 1, 2, 3. Now this choke was not hooked up on this truck. Why? I don't know. Maybe it broke. Maybe the wiring to it went bad. Maybe it was just out of adjustment. Or maybe it just became disconnected. Who knows? Previous owner thought, well, it's better if I just disconnect it entirely and run a cable that used to open the vent on the floor, run that over to my choke, make it a manual choke, which works. It was a plow truck. He didn't care about it running automatically for whoever might step into it. It was just a plow truck. Well, that's fine. But I'm going to use this like a regular truck. I'm going to have people... There we go. That screw does not necessarily look the same as the others, which is the original. Well, that's why it's nice to have a reference carburetor, which has those screws. Instead of screws, it has little rivets. That's not helpful. A non-adjustable choke. What do I choose? I prefer to have an adjustable choke. Make sure it's set right. So, 16. Screw, retainer, choke cover. 17. Retainer, choke cover. 18. Thermostatic cover assembly. 19. Gasket thermostatic cover. That's all this. There we go. And there's the gasket between the outer and the inner half. Pretty sure this rebuild kit has a replacement, but if not, let's hold on to the original. Now, what's next? Clip, fast idle cam rod. That's probably the clip I removed earlier. Now we're pretty much free. One thing you do want to know is when you take this apart, now that this can spin freely, you don't want to put it back together in the wrong orientation. You don't want to do that. I'm going to disassemble as little as possible and leave in the orientation it has right now. Screw choke housing 3. That's going to be this, this, and this, attaching the choke housing to the main body of the carburetor. These were a little loose. I don't know if the former owner was in here trying to repair the choke, remove the choke, whatever the case. I got those 3 screws, they all came out. And it's going to go back together the way I wanted it. Yeah. So I'm going to leave that in its orientation. Try to avoid disturbing it. Not every assembly has to be removed and completely disassembled. Some you can just clean and put right back on. So rod choke pull down, that's off there with the choke housing assembly. Now we're moving on to the fuel bowl. Spacer, fuel bowl, number 25. What do we have in the fuel bowl that could be called a spacer? Well, this one doesn't have a spacer. So what does that mean? Well, like any other instruction that doesn't apply to your carburetor, you ignore it. It says parts are included in most kits, extra parts are included for other kits. So some models do not have this. But we'll open this up later and see when it starts going back together. We'll see what parts it provides us for reassembly. The next part is going to be, looks like, the float assembly. 26, 27, 28. There's a spring holding it in place. This is worth looking at. There's a spring holding this in place. It goes around the needle seat assembly. And there's another spring holding tension to lift up the float. That gives it some dampening so it doesn't bounce around too much when you're off-road. Pry that little spring off there. Lift this whole assembly out. There we go. And note that spring went down into the housing to provide tension on the float. There's the needle, the seat's down in there. I'll put this aside as an assembly. You see this needle hangs on this little clip. I want to make sure to put it back together the same exact way. I'll leave that right there. So that was number 28, 29, 30. Now we've got numbers 31 and 32. And let's see, do we have needle and seat assembly? What do we have here? The diaphragms, seals, accelerator pump diaphragms. Here we go. A needle and seat assembly. So we've got a new seat right here, a new needle, new gasket. Time to remove the old one. What size that's probably going to be? Not a 3/8, so it'll be. Oh, there we go. Bingo, 3/8. Sometimes it's installed with a screw. Sometimes with a hex. This is where your fuel comes in. It has a little strainer assembly as a gasket there. Alright. And has the old gasket right there. See if it pushes. Yep, it pops right off. That's our float bowl there. You can see what parts it has. You have your accelerator pump down here, your jets right here, your inlet comes in through this fitting on the outside to which your fuel line connects, and some debris we're going to clean up in there. But that's it, that's the only things in there. Fuel goes down there for main primary jets. Power valve kicks in when it senses a need for greater acceleration, which this carburetor does not provide great acceleration, but it's okay, it does its job. Some debris, we'll clean that out after. What's next? 20, 32, 33, 34. Deflector, there's no deflector on this one. There is that little strainer, which probably the new one doesn't have a strainer, might have to transfer that. Does it have a strainer? No strainer, so I'll transfer that. Now we're on to the larger part. They want us to remove the jets. Not a bad idea. But these jets, you see the screwdriver, it's going to mangle up the jet if I try to remove it with this. There's a special screwdriver made specifically for removing jets. I've got one. It's out in the garage. Back in a minute. Alright, I haven't built one of these in about 15, 20 years, so time gets the best of us. The ordinary jet screwdriver for a Holley type jet, although it looks like a Holley type jet, it's not. It's larger in diameter. It won't fit. Solution then, you can get the biggest screwdriver you have and try to get it centered as much as possible and give it a twist and break it loose if it's not too bad. But ideally, you want a large flat screwdriver. If you don't have one large, note something. Screwdrivers get wider. If you have a grinder, just grind it down until it's wide enough to span the opening in the jet and fits just snugly. Then you can use that to remove your jet. The reason you want to get the jet out is that down behind there is a little passage. You want to make sure that's clean, not clogged up. So again, a screwdriver, grind it down till it fits snugly in the jet. This one, oh, we got to grind it down a little more to fit in this particular jet. Fit in this other jet just fine. Take a file to it, clean that up, be perfect for taking out the jets. That'll be my new jet screwdriver. Okay, jets are out. Screw pump discharge nozzle 36. I'm guessing that's this large one right here. I have to grind that down a little more to work for all the screws on this. This one will work just fine. This is your accelerator pump. It's about the same place it is on a Holley carburetor. It has a little deflector plate. Banjo fitting. And it also has a needle in there that you don't want to lose. So at this point, flip it over, and out pops your check ball and the little rod pushing down on it. No spring on this one. Shows a spring on some of them. They aren't always going to use the same pieces. Alright. That's 36, that's 37, 38, and 39. The cluster, the Venturi cluster assembly. This piece right here. This is where the fuel is drawn up and mixes with the air in the Venturi right here. Highly precise piece of equipment. Don't drop it. Anything else in there? Let's see. Nope, nothing else. Retainer metering rod. Metering rod assembly, air weight pump discharge ball. That's the weight in the pump discharge ball that came out before. Some models probably have a metering rod. This one doesn't. This has a gasket. Gonna have to take that off and replace it. That's included in the kit, in the rebuild kit. I'm gonna wash this in soap and water and blow out all those passages. Next, we're going to go to the accelerator pump on the front. This puts an extra shot of fuel into your intake when you step on the gas. What's the process for this one? What comes off first? Oh, this rod is not going to come off easily. So we're going to have to remove this whole assembly, then twist it until that slot, the little tang, is able to clear the slot on that. So I'm going to remove the 4 cover screws holding on the accelerator pump. Not on too tight. A nut driver would work just as well. Once you get them loosened, your extension with the socket becomes your nut driver. On the 2150s, having an accelerator pump that works smoothly is key for getting off the line smoothly. If you don't have a working accelerator pump, it's going to bog. And one of the reasons it bogs is because this mechanism is driven by this spring. The throttle lever holds it back. I don't know if you can see it. The throttle moves independently of the accelerator pump. Since gasoline is not compressible, if this were directly connected to this, something would break because the fuel would not be able to be pushed into the accelerator pump passage and shot into the barrels quick enough. So this spring has to move freely on that throttle shaft. If there's any binding, it won't move smoothly. It should move almost instantaneous. So if you're experiencing some lag getting off the line, that could be your problem. So here we go. That accelerator pump has a little, no, I can leave that on there because I don't need to take that off. Note the hole it's on. It's on the second hole, and that this rod slides through that little slot, the little tang there on that rod slides through that little slot when it's lifted up. You keep these two together. They can be disassembled, but really it just needs to be cleaned. It's all mechanical. There's a gasket there. It's a replacement accelerator pump. It's going to leave that there. Don't disassemble more than you have to. Accelerator pump. They crack, they dry out. The gasket is part of the diaphragm itself. It's one piece. You've got a spring, and you've got a little one-way check valve. And keep that all together. Note that it goes with the large end in and the small end around that part of the diaphragm. There's one of these of the same design in the rebuild kit. Next, what have we got? What number is that? 52. Valve umbrella check. That's this little rubber valve which has a little nipple that pulls through. This one's, it was working, I guess, but we got a replacement for it. Clean out all those passages, blow it out with compressed air. Now, what are we moving on to next? We're almost done. Idle screws. There we go. Idle screws. This idle screw was backed out quite a ways compared to this idle screw. Did it back out because the previous owner misadjusted it? I don't know. What I do know is that I have to have a baseline for how much the idle screw should be adjusted out when I put it all back together. That's what I do. Count how many turns in the non-screwed up idle screw is. 1 and almost a half. 1.5. That's not abnormal. That's about what you'd expect. 1.5 turns in. That's where I'll start. That'll get me started in adjusting the idle on the car. Won't be perfect, but it'll be a starting point. Make sure these are not corroded. Make sure, this one, the spring is not moving freely. I might have to scavenge. This spring should move freely. Looks like this one collapsed. So, probably get one of these off of my parts carburetor. See the springs there moving freely. There we go. All right. Next piece. Oh, and it says screw cap limiter. This did not have a cap over the idle screws, so you can adjust the idle on this one. The 4 screws next for the power valve cover. The power valve is what kicks in when you hit the accelerator, your manifold vacuum drops, you need extra fuel. This port here is connected to manifold vacuum. It will sense the increased vacuum and open that power valve diaphragm. I think this has a 2-stage power valve. So a little bit of vacuum, it adds a little bit of fuel. A lot of vacuum, it adds a lot of fuel. There we go. Oh, a little trash in there. Don't want that. Clean that out. In fact, this one from the spare parts carburetor might be in better shape. We'll see. That needs to be cleaned up. That's corroded. That should not be that corroded. Gasket comes off. And power valve comes out. Forget what opening that is. Is that a 5/8? 11/16? Or bigger than 11, bigger than 3/4. But you know it works. Just enough. It's just held in there against the gasket. So once you break that seal, your power valve just spins out. You want to make sure it's clean, but the carburetor kits come with new ones, so that should work just fine. We're almost done. There's not much more to disassemble on this. On the 2150, what makes it different from the 2100 is this altitude compensator assembly. The higher up you go, the leaner your mixture is going to be. This senses that and adds the proper amount of fuel. Pretty clever. Now, let's see. Which do they recommend we take off? This you don't want to disassemble too much. But it's a sensitive canister right here, but you do remove the 3 screws holding it. It is not itself serviceable. And I guess unless you drive at high altitudes, you're not going to know whether it's working or not. I'm pretty much at sea level here, so it doesn't make much of a difference. I don't want it to kick in when it's not supposed to. That's about the only thing I don't want. But it adjusts. I guess it does an adjustment, but I've never had to adjust these things. Wouldn't know how to adjust it if you told me, if I had to. It has a gasket. It has a rod that opens for more or less air to adjust the fuel-air mixture. There we go. And that's it, a sealed unit. That rod goes in there. A diaphragm in here that moves according to air pressure. See a little slot in the bottom. Probably the other side of that diaphragm. It measures air pressure and adjusts automatically. Beautiful. And this little gasket came out of, I don't know where, but it came out of somewhere. So, I'll put that aside. I think that's from the choke. Usually it's pretty clear where things come from. There we go. That must have come from right there. Alright, you always want to account for all your gaskets. Now that's just about it. This inner part of the, what they call the poppet valve assembly. That's 4 screws, 1 on each corner. They also, like many of the other screws, have a little washer. Make sure you don't lose that. It's a little lock washer. And pull it apart. It has a gasket. Pull that gasket off. Ideally try to get the gasket in one piece. You don't want to be scraping gasket off of the mating surfaces. See, that is where that air comes through, admitted to the carburetor through these channels. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Alright. What else? Gasket housing valve, screw and solenoid feedback, 66 ABC. I don't have that. It's not electronically controlled. And that's it. That's as much as you disassemble this carburetor. Next step is to wash it out. Clean out all the passages. Get rid of all the varnish, the grease, everything. I'm going to just take these one by one, go over to my sink and use as mild a detergent as possible. If I need a stronger degreaser, I'll use that, but you don't want to overdo it. You want to be able to clean it up. It is not going to be a concourse restoration. I don't need to disconnect these shafts. I don't need to disconnect this shaft. It moves freely. That's all I need. All right, clean this up and then put it all back together.